ticking clock.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hanging Out with Chops. So great to have you all back here for another episode. A big shout out to all you returning listeners, and a special hello and welcome to all you new listeners here for the first time. Thank you for joining us. There's an invisible band member in every single recording we make. It's not the drummer, it's not the singer, it's not that guy who keeps asking, one more take, bro, I'll lay it on the next tape, I promise. It's the room. The room itself always plays along, whether you like it or not. Every wall, every floor, every corner, they all have a tone. They all have an opinion. And when you start listening to it, you realize that every song you've ever loved has a fingerprint baked right in. Abbey Road isn't just the Beatles. It's the sound of Abbey Road. Motown isn't just James Jameson. It's that creaky old basement in Detroit telling you where you are. So today, we're going to talk about what it really means to know your room. Because it's one thing to mix in a perfectly tuned studio, your comfort zone, where you know exactly how the kick drum will translate in the car and how bright your vocals should be before it gets too harsh. But it's a whole other thing when you step out into the wild. A church, a gym, an auditorium, a stage that sounds like a slapback echo nightmare. And here's the thing, I've been in all these places. Some sound like heaven, some sound like a trash can rolling down a hill. But they all taught me something. In a bit, I'm going to tell you a story about an orchestra and a conductor I worked with in the past. We both learned a valuable lesson that conducting for the recording is completely different than conducting for the audience. And that story, I think, says everything about what we're talking about today. The space you're in changes not only your mix, but your performance, your decisions, and your mindset. Because the truth is, knowing your room isn't just about acoustics. It's about awareness. It's about learning how sound behaves in the real world, not just inside your DAW or your headphones. And once you learn that, you start to hear the world differently. So grab a coffee, sit back. Let's talk about the one part of your mix that doesn't need a plug-in, the air around you.
We're hanging out with Chops. Time just never stops. Answers fade like drops on a broken ticking clock.
Well, guys, I've been thinking about this podcast for a while because this actually happened some time back. And it wasn't just, hey, this happened this one time. No, actually, this was over, I'd say, several years. I would consistently get called back to record an orchestra. And what I mean by orchestra, I mean legit orchestra, with the violas, viola twos, and the cellos, and the double basses, and the French horns, and the, full out 50-member orchestra, And I'm not an expert at orchestras, but me and the conductor had a good relationship, and I had recorded for him other projects. He actually happened to be the dean of a music school, so on several occasions he had brought me in to record, his jazz band, jazz festivals, his choir ensembles, his wind symphonies, so on and so forth. But this time around, we were going to record the orchestra, which was great. Great budget. He was willing to work with me. I was willing to work with him. So this was actually over several years. Year one, we did the zone approach. Of course, I went with a bunch of Neumanns, U87s where I could put them, certain areas, and I used a lot of Neumann KM184s. We had developed such a good relationship that, I would use part of his mic locker, part of my mic locker, and we were trying to make the best happen. So year one, zone miking. Well, the logistics of setting up mics and mic stands and trying not to be intrusive and trying not to have cables and aesthetically trying to make it look nice was a nightmare. I'm not sure if you know how orchestras work, but there is this thing called uniform bowing, which means if someone is bowing their violin and they're coming down, the entire section is coming down. And they actually have rehearsals on just bowing. So I can't just willy-nilly throw mics and stands wherever I thought would be the best sounding areas. I had to work with the size of the person, the size of the section, the area of how big their bowing is. In other words, how high they bowed up and how low they bowed down. And then, of course, what sound I was able to get. So here I go. Mountain of microphones, mountains of stands, the whole shebang-dang. And I'm sure you see where a lot of this is going to go. And for all you smart guys out there, I know you're going to see I know you already know what the first problem is going to be. And the first problem is, once I record it and I capture it, now in front of my DAW, I have 16 zones. Now, even though I try to record them all exactly the same, with the same preamps at the same preamp level, and try to keep, uniformity, the name of the game, I myself now, post-production, am trying to be the conductor. I'm trying to raise this section, lower this other section. These guys are too bright. These guys are too dark. I'm trying to bring this up, bring this down. And got to the point to where I actually had to get a copy of the score. So we tried this. Tried a couple of takes at it, did my mix of it, sent it to him. He would mark the score. Let's bring this part up. Let's bring this part down. Let's balance this with this. There's a little solo section that's getting lost. There's a duet between, Piccolo and whatever. And Piccolo's just completely overpowering this. So I need to bring this up. Anyway, mixing nightmare, to say the least. Makes his notes on the score. Make my adjustments. Re-record it. Send it back to him. Remix it. Send it back to him. He mixes adjustments on his score. I adjust over here on this side. Send him the remix. We go back and forth. And we find an area. And we're like, okay. He's happy with it. I'm happy with it. You know what? See you next year. Next year rolls around. Like we always talk. We meet before. This time it wasn't at a restaurant down the street here from the studio. We actually met there. Of course, beforehand, hey, let's do some breakfast and let's talk about what we're going to do. So the second year, we tried a different plan of attack. Let's do microphones out there. Let's go to, I can't remember what it was, but we picked a number. I want to say it was like, maybe let's go 20 or 25 rows deep. And let's just put, a couple of mics there. No, as a matter of fact, we tried right in front of the orchestra, if I remember correctly. Because we actually went in front of the pit and we mic'd from there. And we went with a live recording. No adjustments. Whatever he conducted and how he felt, it was exactly how it was going to get recorded. Boom. Here's the first problem we ran into. Everything close to the mics was really kind of harsh and abrasive. All right, so, we licked our scars and we moved along. We're like, okay, this was not as good as last year's, but it's all right. Okay. The next year, now I think this is the third year, we moved a little further back. Then we went, 30 or 40 rows back, kind of midway in the auditorium. Now we both agreed we kind of liked what we heard. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen these portable sound walls. They use them in orchestras a lot. And it's basically, 10 to 12 feet tall. And they're they have a top part that'll fold down, and it'll fold up, and a bottom part that'll fold up and fold down. And basically what it does is it helps you bounce sound a certain way. So we have around, 10 of those all the way across the back orchestra. So now we're using those to kind of deflect a little bit of sound. We put those behind the French horns. And now we're getting some nice French horn sizzle to reach where the mics are, and we're liking that. We're noticing the percussion is way too loud. So we completely drop the isolation panels behind the drums, and we actually bring the curtains down in that area. So here we go. Now we're trying to tune the room a bit. We're working through sections. We're working through intros. We're working through fast-moving sections. Now I'm seeing the director himself stopping and asking the assistant director, who's way back there. I'm talking about he's now, almost to the back wall, I would say 100 seats back, asking him, hey, was this cutting through? Could you hear the trombones? Was the fanfare loud enough? Was it, And then he's voicing what he hears back here. Hey, yeah, it sounds good. It is cutting through. It's not cutting through. Then it hit me. And this is the reason I wanted to focus on the story for this podcast. I happened to have been at a show before this, so I had my in-ear rig with me. So we took a break. As a matter of fact, we called it a day, and we had the orchestra again and the hall the next day. And now I told the gentleman, great conductor, I was like, how about we try this? This is going to be completely different. But I'm going to put the microphones in the same location that we like, but I'm going to give you some in-ear monitors, and I'm going to leave the microphones flat. But I want your ears to basically be where those microphones are at back there. The whole purpose was I wanted him to start working the room. And man, he took to it. It took him a while first, He did have to pop them off and talk to, the viola player. And he had to take them off and talk to the trumpet guy or whatever. But eventually, he kind of learned to work the mute button on his pack. And before he knew it, he took to it like, duck to water. But for the first time, now he was catering to what this was actually going to sound like on tape. So there he goes. He starts marking his score, starts making adjustments, and he starts now pushing back certain sections that earlier he would be trying to draw out a larger sound to now asking him to play softer. Parts where they were playing too soft, now he's asking him to play a little louder, making notes on. Now he's adjusting his conducting because now he's able to hear how the room is coloring his sound. So he's able to hear, okay, at that distance, I'm not hearing the attack that I want to hear. So you start hearing him start working with it, and he's like, okay, I need more separation between these notes. I need more silence between the notes. And it has to be short. And I'll hear him say it. Short. Shorter than that. Because once it travels to the distance to where the mic was, it kept sounding short, which is what he wanted. And he would work with the brass, and he'd be, all right, big here, not so big here, forzando piano in this section. But the main point of the story was, for the first time, he was able to hear in his ears what he was actually trying to get off the score. So he reworked his approach. I think as engineers, I learned so much from that day. We need to be working with our room, whether it's your drum room or your vocal room. Sometimes your room could be too lively. It could have too much reverberation. It could be your room is too dead. You dampened the crap out of it. and there's no life at all in that room. When I say know your room, I'm not talking about memorizing where the outlet is or how far the chair rolls before it has to hit the wall. I'm talking about knowing what your room is doing to your sound, the color it adds, the reflection it gives back, the lies it sometimes tells you. And believe me, every room lies. Play your favorite mix. Walk around that room. I guarantee you there's going to be a spot where the bass is just louder. And then there's going to be a spot where you're going to stand and the bass almost disappears unless your room is incredibly tuned. I mean, which the odds are you could have a studio that nice. I mean, but even our studios that were professionally tuned, they need to be readjusted from time to time. So I do have to walk around and I do have to find, the best spots. Plus, I also want to avoid dead spots. Every single space has a personality. Some rooms flatter you. Other rooms expose you. A small untreated room might make your lows sound huge. And you think you nailed it, but then you take the same mix to your car and realize your subs are rattling your license plate off, Or maybe your room has a weird dip at, 400. So every mix you do has a little honkiness to it. And you're always trying to fix it. Why? Because your room is lying. That's why knowing your room is optimal. And that's my whole point about this one podcast. Let me give you an example. Say you're recording a choir in a big church. The natural reverb in that space can sound absolutely heavenly until you try to overdub a solo vocal later in a dry booth. Then suddenly it doesn't sound like it's the same world. If you don't understand how the room's reverb wraps around those voices, you'll spend hours trying to fake it with plugins and never get it quite there. Knowing your room means you can predict it. It means you walk into a church and immediately think, okay, that slap back is about second and a half. I can work with that. That balcony is going to throw back a weird flutter. Let's throw a mic up there and use it. A good engineer records the sound. A great engineer records the space around the sound. I hope that makes sense to y'all. When you're working in your own studio long enough, you start to build a relationship with the room. You know how far off axis your monitor's sweet spot is. You know what frequencies tend to pull in that back corner. And you even start to recognize how the weather changes the air in the room. No joke. Humidity can change how reflection behaves. And when you move to a new space, you have to relearn everything. That's why I tell people, before you start mixing in a new room, spend time listening to it. Play your favorite albums through those monitors. Walk around, sit in different spots. Learn how your ears interpret that space. Because the goal is translation. You want your mix to sound right everywhere. The car, the phone, the club, the earbuds. And the only way that happens is if you really understand what your room is exaggerating and what it's hiding. If you're working live, that's a whole other beast. Because you don't have one room. Now, you've got a new one every night. You've got to be fast. Walk the space, clap, listen to reflections, maybe throw a pink noise if you got it. But the principle's still the same. Know your room before you trust your ears. And when you do, everything changes. You stop second guessing yourself. You mix faster. You make bold choices because you know how they'll translate. And the music, the thing that matters the most, finally sounds the way it was meant to. Much like this orchestra conductor. Now he finally put his ears where those mics were. And he was able to hear what that room was doing. And he adjusted. He was able to draw out and suppress what he needed out of that orchestra. He adjusted, and so can you. That's my whole point. At the end of the day, knowing your room isn't about chasing perfection. It's about building trust, trusting your ears, trusting your instincts, and trusting the space you're working in. The best engineers, the ones who make it look effortless, aren't even pushing faders. They're reacting to the room. They're shaping sound with respect for what's already there. And when you step into a space you don't know, maybe a school auditorium, maybe a festival stage, or maybe a 100-year-old church, don't fight it. Listen, walk around, clap your hands, play a note, hear the reflection. The room will tell you what it wants to tell you. And if you give it a second to speak, you'll learn it. I've been lucky enough to work in some incredible spaces, and some that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. But each one taught me something new about sound, patience, and how fragile balance really is. So whether you're behind the console, in front of the mic, or just trying to make sense of why your mix sounds great in the studio but sounds weird in your car, remember this: the room is always part of the equation. Learn it, respect it, and it'll reward you. Guys, if you're enjoying this episode, do me a favor. Share it, rate it, tell your friend who lives in a studio trench like I do. Every bit of support helps keep this show going. It helps me bring you more stories from behind the glass. Like I said, if you want to support the show, make sure you hit support the show button on the front page of this podcast. And guys, I've had fun. I really like reminiscing and remembering this story, and I'm glad I was able to share it with you. I hope I got it out in the words that I needed to, because it's hard to really convey these huge concepts, especially when you're walking up an auditorium and then walking back down, and then walking up and then walking back down, and walking up the auditorium and down so much that your legs hurt from just walking. But I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope it brought some insight to how important it is to learn your room. All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I'll catch you on the next one.
We're hanging out with chops. Time just never stops. Answers fade like drops on a broken ticking clock.